Next we have Dr. Zakira, Mukaddem-Sablay. I know Zakira for a little while. I studied with her sister. Is she here? Yes, we graduated from UCT in 1996 and completed her internship at New Somerset Hospital. She has a very interesting background. She was a GP for many, many years. And then decided to go and study pediatrics. Very brave, Zakira, but well done. She currently heads up the adolescent services at the GSH Adolescent Centre in Rondebosch. And she describes this role as being both challenging and rewarding. She's a mother of 3 young adults, and this experience serves her well in the current role that she has. Thank you, Zakira.
Everybody. I know it's late on a Sunday afternoon and I'm sure all of you are tired. It's been a full weekend. So thank you all for being here, and inshallah I hope to impart a couple of words of wisdom on this, I think, very important topic, teens and screens. So just for some context, I am a general pediatrician, but for the last 3 years, alhamdulillah, I found myself heading up a dedicated adolescent service. So we look after children 13 to 18 years. An age group that I think all of us in the health profession would agree, we would commonly refer to as the missing middle. Nobody wants them. The pediatricians don't want to look after the teenagers. The physicians don't want them. So they're really stuck in the middle. So I find myself, I consider myself quite privileged actually, to be in a space learning to care for them. When I started, my son said to me, "So mommy, does this mean that you're now a pediatrician?" So I said, "Yeah, I guess perhaps you could say that." Okay, so how do I move this? Thank you. That's good. So but that one's not up there now. Okay. Oh, that one's coming next. Sorry. I've done this so many times and I always get it wrong. So please, apologies for that. Okay, so our adolescents today, they are known as the digital generation or the Gen Zs. Having grown up immersed in iPads, smartphones and social networking sites. Having what we refer to as a digital bond to the internet. About 25% of teenagers are almost constantly online, and 80% of them actually become acutely distressed if they are separated from their electronic devices. Gen Zs today are spending an average of 6 hours per day on the internet. A lot of it playing games. So the rapid technological advances over the past decade have provided adolescents with numerous benefits, including expansive access to knowledge and far-reaching communication tools. But tied to this are the concomitant risks to being exposed to all that technology. And for them, learning how to balance their online and offline lives, as well as the potential exposure to risky health behaviors via social media, is actually a critical tool. So in my talk today, we will cover various aspects. We'll look at the evolution of social media. We'll speak a little bit about the pros and cons. We'll talk about how social media is actually a drug, its effect on the brain. We'll talk about how social media affects teenage mental health. We'll look at cyberbullying, anxiety, suicide, and body image, and then we'll hopefully take home a little action plan. So the first iteration of the web was actually called Web 1.0, and its primary purpose was to provide information to consumers. So technological advances led to Internet 2.0, a new web that provided information to consumers but also empowered users to view, create, and share data with peers and the public. Web 2.0 then led to the so-called social media, in inverted commas, also called interactive or immersive media, and it represents a set of tools which are centered on interaction and sharing of content with others. So when I reviewed this talk a few weeks ago, I had actually first presented it to an audience of family medicine experts in 2022. I realized how in just 2 years, the landscape has actually changed. We now have TikTok in the mix, we have ChatGPT and AI as well. So today's teenagers, they have an increased capacity to interact with each other and the larger world using this media. They have enhanced opportunities to explore and experiment via social media, and they also have an increased likelihood of actually being influenced by social media. So if anyone here has not seen the movie The Social Dilemma, I strongly suggest that you do. It will actually just leave you stumped as you realize how we have all, not just our children, but how we have all been drawn into this crazy cyberspace. It's a space of algorithms and patterns, a space that is wide open. And just think about a young child or an adolescent in that space. Pretty scary. So before we focus on the negative side of social media and our teenagers, let's cast our eye momentarily on the positive or the benefits of social media. And there are many. For example, virtual communities play an increasing role in the lives of adolescents today. Lots of studies have shown that adolescents who experience a greater number of positive reactions, or as they would say, likes, to their social networking site profiles, they report higher self-esteem and satisfaction with their life. It aids in the development of their identity. So we know that one of the most important tasks of adolescents is the development of an identity. Social networking sites provide a technological canvas on which they can actually explore and shape the identity by choosing what information to display and how that information changes in response to experiences as well as feedback from their peers. For young adults, feedback from their peers may actually then reinforce particular aspects of their identity. It may allow for contribution to education and civic engagement. I think we can all agree that the powerful impact of social media in highlighting the plight of the Palestinians is just one example of how social media can actually be engaged with in a positive way. Not that the information coming at us is always positive. It's also a means of health access and support because it provides a ready source of information. The risks or the negative side of social media are just as many. Whilst many adolescents are quite savvy with technology, their knowledge of internet safety is sometimes lacking, and many of them are actually unaware of the ramifications of their actions in cyberspace. So we'll now talk a little bit about social media as a drug, or that social media is a drug. So in recent years, social media has become a part of all of our lives, including those of our children. From the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic period, media device and internet access has rapidly increased. Adolescents connected to the internet alone, they consulted social media, Instagram, TikTok and YouTube. And during lockdown, internet usage allowed communication with peers and for the continuity of activities such as school teaching. The pandemic had a strong impact on the mental and psychological health of adolescents, and this caused changes in their routine and their daily activities. The forced isolation that we saw led to increased anxiety and stress, especially in fragile individuals, such as children and adolescents, and this led to massive changes in their day-to-day lives. A huge risk was that they were actually taking refuge in the excessive use of smartphones, electronic devices, and social networks, and they were running into what we call a so-called digital overdose. So, whilst some are skeptical about the addictive potential of social media websites, findings of brain imaging studies actually show similarities between substance addiction and social media addiction. They provide strong evidence that Facebook, Twitter, and other sites like Instagram, they work very much like drugs and alcohol in the brain. In 2013, a study linked the intensity of Facebook use to the level of activity in the nucleus accumbens, which is the brain's reward system. In particular, drawing the link to the part of the reward center that is associated with maintaining our social reputation. Additional research established that compulsive internet use leads to changes in the brain, particularly in the reward pathways, which are comparable to those observed in drug addicts. So with every like or retweet, our brains experience a rush of neural rewards. Once an association between social media usage and the pleasure from dopamine is created, the seemingly harmless interaction or action of scrolling becomes addictive through the algorithm's actually intended design. So when we investigate the impact of social media on adolescent well-being, we actually see that there's been a massive increase in mental health problems and presentations to the emergency departments in this age group. I can actually attest to this with the fact that we have seen and completed over 2,000 counseling sessions at the Adolescent Center where I work between November 2021 and July 2024. Most of these for adolescent mental health concerns. The entire 2022 edition of the South African Child Health Gauge was actually devoted to child and adolescent mental health. And the reason? We are currently in the middle of the hugest mental health crisis amongst children and teenagers in history. Fueled by the pandemic, there has been a frightening increase in the number of children presenting with mental health concerns in the last 4 years. So various theories abound, but one that keeps rearing its ugly head is the interplay between social media exposure and declining mental health. I recommend an excellent article published in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health from July 2022 called The Use of Social Media in Children and Adolescents, a scoping review on the potential risks. The aim of the review was to focus on risks correlated to social media use by children and adolescents, identifying the nature of the problems and engaging in preventive recommendations. I will not be elaborating on the technical details of the review, but I will highlight the key findings which I thought would be pertinent to our discussion today. Depression, anxiety, and behavioral disorders are among the leading causes of illness and disability among teenagers. There is a positive relationship between internalizing symptoms like depression and anxiety and social media use. Depression is connected to a rapidly increased use of digital communication and virtual spaces, which now substitute face-to-face contact with excessive smartphone use and online chatting. The more time adolescents spend on social devices, the higher levels of depression are found. In this sense, social media is representing a risk factor for depression in the young. Interestingly, physical activity may actually decrease depression and anxiety. So this may potentially protect our young against the harmful effects of social media use. So this means that we need to get our children out and playing again. Even if evidence revealed that social media use is linked to poor mental health, the relationship between social media and depression in adolescents is still to be completely understood. It is unclear whether social media use leads to more depression, or if the depressive symptoms actually cause individuals to seek out more social media, which could then feed into a vicious cycle. So various studies suggest that the relationship between internalizing symptoms of depression and anxiety and social media are actually associative and not causative. So what about cyberbullying? Oh gosh, one back. Cyberbullying may be defined as any behavior performed through electronic or digital media by individuals or groups that repeatedly communicate hostile or aggressive messages that are intended to inflict harm or discomfort on others. Compared to actual physical bullying, cyberbullying may well be even more dangerous, as victims can be reached anytime and in any place. Moreover, the anonymity amplifies aggression, as the perpetrator actually feels quite out of reach. And the ability to hide behind fake names provide bullies the opportunity to communicate in content and language they would not actually use in front of people. So it almost emboldens them. In literature, cyberbullying has been identified in phone calls, text messages, pictures, video clips, emails, and messaging apps. This is a huge public health concern. In South Africa in March 2021, a study actually revealed that 51.5% of adolescent participants had been cyberbullied. European data showed that 19.8% of 11 to 17-year-old internet users reported cyberbullying. This tells us we have a problem in South Africa. Victims of bullying exhibit increased depressive symptoms, anxiety, internalizing behaviors, externalizing behaviors, and greater academic distractions. Cyberbullying has been associated with higher risks of depression, paranoia, anxiety, and suicide than traditional forms of bullying. According to a meta-analysis, traditional bullying increases suicidal ideation by a factor of 2, whereas cyberbullying increases it by a factor of 3. Big problem. Anxiety may represent a risk factor for children and adolescent health, as it influences the way they see their body, the way they feel, and it may impact on social acceptance and relations with peers. The excessive use of at least one type of screen, including televisions, computers, social media, video gaming, has been connected with anxiety symptoms in this adolescent age group. Evidence shows that the degree of social media use in children is a significant predictor of anxiety and perceived stress levels, and that it increases with each additional hour of social media use. Again, whilst lots of studies have shown an association, it is unclear whether social media provokes anxiety or if anxiety is the cause of excessive social media use. So very much a catch-22 situation. Emergency department visits for mental health, including anxiety problems, have risen starkly since 2009. And I'm sure all the GPs in the room will agree that you are seeing far more young children presenting with anxiety. And this is definitely linked to the increased use and the harmful effects of social media. Anxious adolescents may not be able to control their discomfort to the point that they regularly need to go and check back their previous posting on Facebook, who's commented, who's said, who's liked, who's not liked. The constant connection then to social networks through digital devices contributes to feelings of anxiety. Adolescents and children who are suffering from social anxiety may actually prefer to interact with texting, instant messaging, and emailing over face-to-face interactions. And obviously, this behavior may then be an increased risk in individuals who are already vulnerable to social anxiety disorder. So we may actually be triggering that, because we're substituting digital media now for interpersonal communication to avoid fearful situations, reinforcing this behavior over time, and then actually worsening the social anxiety that the child has. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. Social media platforms such as Facebook, Snapchat, and Instagram, body image is obviously a very important topic and very relevant to the adolescent age group. People post their most flattering pictures and their views, and they create this online environment that could be seriously damaging to body image acceptance. Spending time on social media puts adolescents under a higher risk of comparing themselves to the models that they now see as being more attractive. As a result, these unfavorable social comparisons of physical appearance may now actually exacerbate body image apprehension. Moreover, beauty trends are constantly being reinforced through social media networks, and the imaging editing tools are often used to alter images to fit beauty standards. Teenagers who perhaps are not aware of these digital changes made in commercial photos may then become really insecure about their own image. This may result in reduced self-esteem, reduced body satisfaction, mainly among adolescent girls. developing body imaging concerns, engaging in weight modification behavior, and potentially developing eating disorders. Nowadays, adolescents, and in particular girls, they need to fit social media standards for photo posting. I found this very interesting. 28% of girls aged 8 to 18 years admit to editing all their photos to make themselves look more attractive before posting it online. So in addition to social media causing body image problems, adolescents with body image misperception may now look to the internet for advice on how to lose weight quickly. However, the suboptimal quality of online information contributes to the development of unhealthy eating attitudes and behaviors. And it may even be that the content of these sites promotes eating disorders by providing unhealthy weight loss. I believe you now have dedicated anorexia sites, which actually glamorizes anorexia, or bulimia websites that glamorizes bulimia. So we are up against a sinister force. And as healthcare providers, we need to actually arm ourselves with the tools on how to address it. A quick word on social media and teenage suicide. Suicide is the third leading cause of death in both adolescents and young adults. Third after road traffic accidents and injuries, gunshots and traumatic injuries. So we know that the incidence of suicidal ideation and suicidal behavior increases markedly after puberty, and it peaks during adolescence. The most common method that adolescents would employ to kill themselves is actually by hanging. And you can actually go onto the internet and get a how to hang yourself. Older adolescents and young adults most commonly use firearms to kill themselves, so gunshots. Suicide rates among adolescents have increased by 56% from 2009 to 2017, where in the US, where guns are available. And several studies have actually shown a link between social media exposure and suicidality. When one considers the collective impact that social media exposure has on adolescent brains, it's understandable how grave this risk is. As I mentioned earlier, traditional bullying increases suicidal ideation by a factor of 2.1, whereas cyberbullying increases it by a factor of 3.12. And this is frightening. Stats from around the world actually show an increased suicide among young girls compared to young boys. So we need to keep an eye on them. So just to wrap up, social media is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. Although social media use has demonstrated to be of utility, excessive or non-correct use may be a risk factor for mental health, including depression, anxiety, and addiction. Grade 8 learners who spend more than 10 hours a day on social media are more likely to say that they are unhappy than peers who spend less time online. Teenagers who spend more than 3 hours per day on devices are 38% more likely to have risk factors for suicide. I'll be very happy to share this talk to anybody who wants it, because I think there are a lot of numbers that are important here. Social media use, as I said, may correlate to poor nutrition, may lead to eating disorders and unhealthy eating behaviors to begin with. Associations have been found with increasing physical problems simply because they're not out there playing. So we're having this sedentary lifestyle, we're seeing more obese teenagers, and then the implications of being an obese young adult, and then diseases of lifestyle that we see early, younger diabetics, younger people with heart disease, etc., etc. Children and adolescents who use social media for many hours a day are also at higher risk for behavioral problems. We've said this: cyberbullying, online grooming, eye problems. Some of the GPs out here can have finger, thumb problems because of all the texting. Right? We actually have, there's an entity, it's called, I think it's like a trigger thumb that they get from actually being on their phones. Eye strain. I don't think we've ever seen so many young people, Suraya is there and Faisal, coming for eye tests just because they are on devices all the time and exposed to this all the time. So uncontrolled social media use can lead to sexting, exposure to pornography, exposure to unwanted sexual material online, and early sexual activity. Social media users meet more online risks than their peers do, with an increased risk for those who are more digitally competent. So finally, what can we do? I mean, I know it's a very doomy and gloomy talk, but what can we actually do? So public and medical awareness must rise over this topic, and new preventive measures must be found. And it starts with us, with the caregivers, and even with website or application developers. I think we need to hold them accountable. I mean, I think legally you have to be 18 to have an Instagram account, legally. It's like you have 12-year-olds who have Instagram. So why are the rules around this not actually tighter? And maybe this is what we need to start asking for. Families should be educated on the dangers and the concerns of having children and adolescents online, like we've just done today. We should screen for media exposure during our periodic visits with our children, all right? I don't have time to go into it, but there's a really useful tool that I use with my adolescents. It's called the Heads tool. You can see it in the middle there, and maybe you can just Google it. But one of the things that you talk to them about is their social media access. How much time are you on your device? How restricted is your time on your device? Do you hand your phone into your parents at night, etc., etc.? By creating the awareness and normalizing the conversations around it, I think will actually make a little bit of progress. Okay? It's also recommended currently that all of us, that we screen our adolescents and younger children for depression and anxiety with every health visit. We have to check in on them and see how they are doing from a mental health perspective. Pediatricians or doctors, we can counsel our parents to guide children to appropriate content. Parents should actually look at sites that their children are visiting, put the measures in place that we know they are. Don't trust your child alone with the internet. It's just far too dangerous, all right? We can obviously also remind our young patients about the dangers of not perpetrating cyberbullying and the risks associated with being the bully and not necessarily being bullied. The dangers, and there are lots of legal ramifications around it. So our discussions with our families in the context of a consultation need to become much broader now that we've got this added thing that we need to. It's like the silent monster in the room. We can obviously encourage families to, everybody exhibits the same healthy patterns when it comes to social media use. There's no point telling your child that no social media after 10 o'clock and then you lying in your bed until 1 a.m. So you've got to actually lead by example. No phones at the dinner table. No phones before 9 o'clock in the morning, for example, on the weekend. Hand that phone in the evening and take it from them. I can tell you a lot of the adolescents actually wish their parents did enforce some more rules. Alright? So, quickly, the jury's out. A mobile device is akin to handling a child or a teenager a loaded gun. And what is required is a task force of skilled health professionals, that's us, plus clued up parents. While social media is not going away, we need to make our teenagers realize that life is precious and that the sky out there is blue and that they can still go out there and enjoy themselves without this device in their hand. We need to find solutions to keeping our adolescents and children safer online. I believe that if we are empowered and we know that this is how social media can affect our children, then we can actually choose how and when we want to engage with it. Our children need the assurance that they can come back to us with any problem that they may face as a result of their social media exposure. So here's to many years of happy families and happy homes, and the privileged role that we as healthcare professionals actually get to play in those spaces. Zakira.
Zakira, for that interesting but scary talk. All those numbers and percentages give me a lot to think about. Next we have Ms. Serena Sayed.